President Obama says the Bible supports his recent sweeping directive ordering public schools to let transgender students use the bathroom of their choice. The president made the remark at a town hall meeting in Elkhart, Indiana. On the PBS NewsHour, Mr. Obama said he believes he's following Jesus' command to treat others the way he'd want to be treated.
My reading of Scripture tells me that that golden rule is pretty high up there in terms of my Christian belief.
The president said he wants to make sure children are treated with kindness. That's right, Pat. The head of the Georgia chapter of the ACLU has resigned, and it's all because her young daughters say they were frightened after seeing a group of transgendered men in a public ladies' bathroom. Maya Dillard-Smith recalled the incident, saying, "My children were visibly frightened, concerned about their safety, and left asking lots of questions." She says the incident highlighted the ACLU's unequal treatment of people's rights, and she argues the ACLU fights for the rights of transgender persons to use the bathroom of their choice, but has nothing to say about her own daughter's safety. Smith says her views are no longer aligned with the ACLU and wants protection for women in public restrooms.
Here's a riddle. What do comedian Kathy Griffin, actress Julianne Moore, and Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg have in common?
I'm hopefully one of America's most famous atheists.
They joined Bill Maher in counting themselves among those in America who say they do not believe God exists. Various surveys put the number of atheists in America around 5%. And according to the Pew study in 2012, 1 in 5 people claim they have no religious affiliation at all. Then there's a very activist atheist movement underway, getting its message out not in the mainstream media, but on social media. Take these Facebook pages, for example. Each has hundreds of thousands of likes as atheists challenge their critics on any number of news items and social issues of the day. Activist atheists have also taken to YouTube, with huge audiences following. Meet Amazing Atheist Guy. That's what he calls himself. Here he's rallying against Christian evangelicals, who after the Newtown massacre tried to put the blame on godless schools.
We kicked the 10 Commandments out of schools. We've kicked God out of our public school system. And I think God would say to us, hey, I'll be glad to protect your children, but you got to invite me back into your world first.
God didn't save the kids because he's not allowed in school. So all of a sudden God just respects the law of man? Isn't he an all-powerful being?
Last year, a massive crowd braved the cold on the National Mall for what was billed as the Reason Rally. Atheists and all secularists invited to attend. Speakers pledged to battle prejudice and bias.
I am here for those children in Texas and other states who are being told lies about history and science printed in taxpayer-funded textbooks. It's going to stop.
Atheist.org is putting its message up on billboards across the country. This one in Paterson, New Jersey, home to a large Muslim population, reads, "What do you see? 37 million Americans know myths when they see them." And it's written in both English and Arabic.
In Washington, the State Department now admits that a staffer deliberately deleted archive video from a 2013 news conference about the Iranian nuclear talks. Officials had previously blamed a glitch for the gap in the video, during which a reporter asked if the White House had lied about secret talks with Iran. It is unclear who ordered that video to be deleted.
Critics of the Iran nuclear deal say the incident proves their claims the Obama administration misled the American people. Republican Senator Tom Cotton insisting the State Department, quote, identify the official who ordered manipulation of the Iran video and impose appropriate discipline. The episode comes on the heels of a top aide to President Obama, Ben Rhodes, telling the New York Times Magazine that the administration created a, quote, echo chamber to manipulate the media in favor of the deal.
In an extraordinary coincidence, America's elite military acrobatic flying teams each suffered a crash today. A Navy Blue Angels F-18 fell near Nashville where the team was practicing for a show. The pilot was killed. Earlier today, an Air Force Thunderbird F-16 crashed after a flyby at the Air Force Academy graduation where the president was speaking. The pilot ejected safely. A Secret Service helicopter picked him up, and he got a handshake from the commander-in-chief.
Hi, I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching this special edition of The Factor, a nation divided left versus right in America. The growing ideological divide between liberals and conservatives is reaching a fever pitch in this presidential election season, and it was on violent display outside a Donald Trump rally in San Jose, California, when anti-Trump protesters confronted Trump supporters.
George, this was one of the most violent scenes I have ever witnessed at a Trump rally. At times, it seemed like the police had no control of the situation. People were getting beat up right in front of them. And these were not clashes. These were pure attacks. Trump supporters, men, women, even the elderly, left this building last night and walked right into danger. Overnight, all-out brawls outside the Trump rally in San Jose, California. Trump supporters harassed, beaten, and bloodied by mobs of protesters.
They were like spitting on me and stuff.
This man says he was sucker punched, his clothes torn off his back.
7 more people just come in, start punching me. I look pretty bad.
This lone female Trump supporter tried to stand her ground. Her sign torn from her hands, her glasses ripped off, then shoved in her face. A woman wearing a Trump jersey cornered and then egged in the face.
Nazis go home!
Fights breaking out in the streets all over the convention. Inside, Trump spoke to a large and welcoming crowd.
We're going to build that wall, don't even think about it.
But outside, protesters accused Trump of being a racist and hunted down the people that support him.
Another fistfight's about to break out right now. The Trump supporter is getting pummeled right now.
That man eventually fighting his way back to police. At another point, protesters followed this couple, violently harassing them, then storming the parking lot where they tried to escape. Protesters shaking cars and smashing taillights. Drivers forced to hit the gas to get out. Police were there, armed in riot gear, but from what we witnessed, reluctant to initially stop or engage the protesters. Then this, a young man running in fear from protesters, then getting tackled before breaking free. We point him to police.
There's a cop over there.
This Trump supporter walking with his wife, spat on, bottles thrown at them, then punches. He says it was the only way he could get out.
What am I going to do? I had 10 people throwing punches at me.
Now, there were some peaceful demonstrators last night, but many of the people we saw were young men and young women who were here to do only one thing, which is to throw punches. And on more than one occasion, Robin, we did see young people throwing up gang signs in those mobs of protesters.
Meanwhile, Michelle Obama is taking a page out of her husband's playbook, taking a thinly veiled swipe at Trump without mentioning him by name. Here's the First Lady during her commencement address at the City University of New York.
And here in America, we don't give in to our fears. We don't build up walls to keep people out because we know that our greatness has always depended on contributions from people who were born elsewhere, but sought out this country and made it their home.
And Mrs. Obama went on to speak out against those who, quote, act as if name-calling is an acceptable substitute for thoughtful debate. That was her final commencement address as First Lady.
East Lawrence, word is getting out about what's happened with the water, and people are flocking to stores like this. This is the Dollar General in East Lawrence, the Dollar General Plus, and people here are buying water by the case. In East Lawrence, they're a tight-knit community, and that community is one of many dealing with a water problem.
Don't drink the water. It's got to be very serious. and we're not comfortable at all.
Many people taking action immediately after seeing WHNT News 19's breaking news report about the EPA directive. Hurrying out to buy cases of water for their families. Ron Whitehead is concerned, but he's also kind of annoyed.
Go home, fill up the ice trays with bottled water, drink bottled water, try to wash dishes with bottled water, feed my pets bottled water. It's just really going to be an imposition.
2 of our employees, that's basically all they have had time to do is bring the roll containers out and put water on the shelf, and the shelves are emptying just as soon as they put it out.
She actually ordered an extra shipment on Saturday in anticipation of a rush, and she's glad she did. The store quickly filled Thursday with families stocking up, hoping they'll get more answers about their water soon.
One of the things that we have learned over the course of the last 7.5 years is that government plays a vital role, but it is every citizen's responsibility to be prepared for a disaster. And that means taking proactive steps like having an evacuation plan, having a fully stocked disaster supply kit. If your local authorities ask you to evacuate, you have to do it. Don't wait.
Next tonight, 2 severe storms are set to hit this weekend, one in the south and the other up and down the East Coast. It comes after a frantic search for American soldiers who were missing, swept away in the floods in Texas. And tonight, just before we came on, we learned 9 soldiers are now confirmed dead. Teams searched for the missing after their vehicle flipped over in the rushing waters. Authorities warning of major rain again this weekend. Near Fort Worth, take a look at this. The power of those floodwaters. The SUV there nearly washed away as well. Witnesses screaming to the family. More on the East Coast storm in a moment, but first the South, where they are bracing already.
In Texas tonight, the search for answers after a catastrophe during a training exercise. Officials say military personnel were trying to close a road near Owl Creek on the sprawling base, worried it was rushing its banks. That's when the massive 11-ton light-medium tactical vehicle was swept by fast-moving waters. Remarkable, since the huge and heavy truck has a high clearance and is built to handle several feet of water. Only 3 of the 12 on board made it out alive.
Due to the quick action of some other soldiers that were training, we were able to rescue 3 soldiers.
Outside Houston tonight, records smashed by the flooded Brazos River. And outside Fort Worth, soaked earth causing landslides, threatening these apartments.
Even though many of the rivers are now starting to recede, none of this water is going to be going away anytime soon. And they also have the problem of flash flooding now from storm bursts that continue to roll in.
In Granbury, Texas, this truck forcefully swept away after a huge downpour. Watch it spin, ending up pinned against a tree.
Get out! Get out!
Remarkably, the man, woman, and dog inside were all able to climb out in time. The governor declaring a state of disaster in 31 counties.
What are we looking at here? Well, it's not a UFO come crashing down to Earth, at least according to NASA. It's a meteor. These pictures were taken in Arizona. The fireball lit up the night sky for hundreds of miles around and was visible in at least 6 states. Scientists estimate it was going at least 40,000 miles per hour. Fortunately, nobody was hurt on the ground. Based on the trajectory, it's expected pieces of the object are now spread out across a desert south of Tucson.
Well, a smuggling network has guided dozens of illegal immigrants out of Middle East terror hotspots and into the U.S. The Washington Times reports that men from Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Palestine have snuck into the U.S. through the southern Mexico border. One migrant from Afghanistan reportedly has ties to the Taliban and was part of a terror plot against the U.S. Border Patrol officers say they do not have a good system for detecting potential threats. This heightens concerns that the southern border is wide open for those who may plan to do harm in the U.S.
A man is arrested for trying to smuggle illegal immigrants in a cloned Border Patrol Tahoe. Take a look at the vehicle in question. A Border Patrol agent noticed the Tahoe looked suspicious, so he followed the vehicle headed to Cotulla. Agents stopped the Tahoe near the 65-mile marker of I-35. A total of 12 illegal immigrants were found crammed inside the Tahoe. The driver was arrested. The investigation is ongoing.
Startling new video exposes a U.S. college professor promoting the benefits of Sharia law. This video comes to us from a group called the United West. It shows Florida Atlantic University professor Bassam al-Halabi saying he supports cutting off hands as an appropriate punishment for stealing. At a panel on Islamophobia last month, the professor said Sharia law is needed to shut down organized crime. Then he gave the following example.
If it takes one or two people to have their hands cut off and then there's no more stealing in the whole nation, that's a much better resolution than having hundreds of people die every day.
What? Wow. What? Are you kidding me? What?
With less than 2 weeks now until the Euro 2016 football championship in France, the mood in the country is less than festive. Security and even terror concerns are growing amid 2 months now of nationwide violent protests.
If your summer plans involve a trip to Europe, you may want to reconsider or at least take extra precautions because the State Department has put out a new warning.
We're now learning that the U.S. State Department has issued a warning for American tourists not to travel or reconsider their travel plans to Europe, specifically to Europe in general this summer and to the Euro 2016 specifically, which kickstarts here on June 10th and is going to attract 2.5 million people from all over the world and continue until July 10th. They're saying that this tournament could be a potential target for terrorism activities. So the State Department has issued this warning that they have said on their website is going to be extended until August 31st, 2016. Of course, making it obvious that it's directly going to affect potential tourists coming here to France for this European Championship. And this is something that the European officials here, particularly in France, of course, have been concerned about, considering this latest wave of strikes that we're seeing unraveling in France with railway stations, metro, and towards the end of the week, potentially airports striking against labor law reforms that the government is trying to push along with. We do know that concerns have been high that this could affect tourism. So now this latest terror alert is certainly something that is going to be bothering French officials here on the ground. We can take a listen to what was said by the French and German intelligence services on this. Let's take a listen.
We know that ISIS has the European Championships in its sights.
They will try to hit as soon as possible and achieve the greatest possible impact.
This is a story you got to pay attention to. German authorities arrested 3 Syrians earlier today on suspicion they were planning a terror attack in Dusseldorf. The men planned allegedly to use 2 suicide bombers as other members of their terror cell would use guns and explosives in an attempt to kill as many civilians and cause as many casualties as possible.
Açık söylüyorum. Zürriyetimizi artıracağız. Neslimizi çoğaltacağız diyor. Nüfus planlamasıymış, doğum kontrolüymüş. Hiçbir Müslüman aile böyle bir anlayışın içerisinde olamaz. Rabbim ne diyorsa, sevgili peygamberi ne diyorsa biz o yolda gideceğiz.
It's true that we live in unusually challenging times, but it's also true that we can make it through these challenges because Germany is a strong country.
On Britain's streets, tempers are becoming frayed as make your mind up time approaches.
So what? Nobody was working round before Europe came about. You've changed it worse.
At the heart of the debate, fears Europe's freedom of movement rules mean UK immigration is out of control. The latest figures show 1/3 more people came to live in the UK last year than left to live abroad, up 20,000 on the year before. Nearly half, 184,000 from the EU, but 4,000 more came from outside Europe. They're the kind of figures that pressured UK Prime Minister David Cameron in the 2010 general election to promise an in-out referendum. Campaigning under the slogan, "We want our country back," the anti-EU argument has struck a chord. With the EU suffering economic malaise and high unemployment, and its southern borders gripped in an unprecedented migrant crisis, there are fears for the future of the wider European enterprise. The stakes in Britain's EU referendum really couldn't be greater.
Aujourd'hui, de réponses suffisantes pour accueillir dignement ces personnes dans le dispositif.
Today, we don't have enough resources to take in these people with dignity within the infrastructure that the state, since it's their job, has provided. We're going to take matters into our own hands. I've asked my team to look at sites belonging to the city of Paris. We've identified several, particularly in the north of Paris, where we can install a camp, a humanitarian shelter, with the help of non-profits and I hope the help of the state.
Across India are suffering from massive droughts, impacting 330 million people out of its 1 billion population. A study done by the Associated Chambers of Commerce shows that 2 consecutive years of droughts have led to a massive water shortage. The situation is so grim, a large part of the money earmarked for the country's development will now have to go towards aid and subsidies. This places much pressure on the government and the economy. The drought has also created inflationary pressures, making food management a challenge in the coming months. India is looking at the upcoming monsoon season as a silver lining, but economists say that it should also be looking at the drought as a warning sign of the things to come as climate change and global warming starts to have its impact on the Asian region.
A gold rush in Peru's southeastern Amazon has laid waste to the rainforest and wreaked havoc on human health. The country's environment ministry says 41% of the population have dangerous levels of the neurotoxin in their bodies. It's not just the miners who handle mercury used to separate gold from ore, but also the people who eat the fish from contaminated rivers. The emergency measures will stand for 60 days. The Environment Ministry says the miners dump around 40 tons of mercury in rivers every year and have destroyed more than 100,000 hectares of rainforest. Even small amounts of mercury can cause irreversible damage to multiple organs, including the brain. Children
and pregnant women are the most vulnerable.
The government plans to take uncontaminated fish to Madre de Dios and will also set up mobile health clinics and implement education campaigns. It's a crisis which experts saw coming.
Most of the people in Madre de Dios, more than 95%, consume fish daily. It's their primary protein source. So this represents a very serious public health crisis.
Venezuela is on the brink tonight. The South American country that features the world's largest oil reserves is in economic chaos. Violence in the streets, riots over food. Experts say it could only be days before the tinderbox of Venezuela explodes.
Protesters in Venezuela are trying to make it to the presidential palace. Just yards short, they are met by a wall of riot police with tear gas. Some respond with rocks, others with angry chants, and one simple demand: food.
We can't go on any longer like this. We don't have breakfast or lunch, and we merely don't have any dinner.
In a country with the world's largest oil reserves, there is a growing fury among those who stand in line day after day, searching for basic items like flour and chicken that have disappeared from store shelves.
We are trying to get to the presidential palace so they can tell us why there is no food arriving. The Venezuelan people are tired of this humiliation.
Almost empty shelves at a pharmacy in Caracas. Another part of the economic crisis in Venezuela, with the cash-strapped government importing low-cost medicine from allies like China and Cuba. Some medical experts suspect some of the drugs are less effective. The government says this is part of a smear campaign by multinational pharmaceutical companies. A state hospital says children suffering from leukemia are not recovering as they used to. They find comfort where they can. Doctors want the quality of medicine investigated. This mother is struggling to find treatment for her 8-year-old son.
There is nothing here, and we have to go to other countries to look for medicine, and it's very expensive. Unfortunately, the situation we are going through is terrible. There are many children and adults who are dying because there are no medicines to treat the diseases they have.
Unresolved problem segment tonight, the real state of the American economy. This week, President Obama practically proclaimed that the economy has never been better.
America's economy is not just better than it was 8 years ago. It is the strongest, most durable economy in the world. By almost every economic measure, America's better off than when I came here at the beginning of my presidency. That's the truth.
But the latest jobs report from the Labor Department is painting quite a different picture. Just 38,000 jobs were added in May, the lowest monthly total in 6 years. And Americans' median household income has barely budged since President Obama took office.
Wall Street just got a big surprise. The government says the economy only created 38,000 jobs in May, way below the 160,000 forecast. The job counts for the 2 prior months were also revised lower. A slowing job market is bad news for U.S. workers and bad news for the economy. And it will also spook stock investors as it's a sign the job creation machine is losing steam. The jobs number was so weak that it could also keep the Federal Reserve from hiking interest rates in coming months. In fact, Wall Street has now slashed the odds of a Fed rate hike in June to less than 4%, down from 19% before the release of the report. And the odds of a hike in July fell to 38%, down from nearly 60%. The Fed has said it will only hike in coming months if the economic data comes in good. But this jobs report was not good. The Fed will have to rethink its timetable for rate hikes.
Now, figures published by the European Union statistical agency Eurostat show that more than 16 million people are currently unemployed in the Eurozone. The report also indicates that a quarter of all those living in the EU cities are either in poverty or at risk of falling into poverty. Now, correspondent Jerome Hughes has a report from a meeting of EU education ministers in which the issue was put to debate.
There are 21.2 million unemployed people in the European Union, according to figures just published by Eurostat, the EU's statistical office. 16.4 million are unemployed in the 19-country Eurozone. Youth unemployment continues to be a huge problem. In Greece, it is running at 51.4%, Spain 45%, Croatia 39.9%, and Italy 36.9%. The latest unemployment figures were published on the same day that EU education ministers were meeting in Brussels. They are promising major reforms to the EU's higher education system so that graduates' qualifications better match what employers are looking for.
We have already conducted a wide-ranging public consultation on this. Starting from the many valuable contributions we received, we will focus on aspects such as the need for a broad set of skills to prepare students for life in a changing labour market and an active society.
The unemployment crisis in the EU continues to feed a social crisis. Just this week on Monday, Eurostat published data showing that 24%, that's almost a quarter, of all people living in EU cities are either in poverty or at risk of falling into poverty. Campaigners say that is a terrible indictment of the EU project.
The Seine River as it sets a record for its highest level since 1982. Relentless rain over the past few days has caused the river to dramatically rise.
Well, yes, I'm in awe because it is too high, and if it keeps on raining, it will definitely overflow.
And that's the fear. But French officials say they are confident the river reached its maximum height Friday afternoon local time and will now subside. With the Seine 6 meters above its normal level, the famous footpaths that line the river are now completely flooded out. And when it comes to the trees along the riverbanks, well, you can't even see their trunks anymore. And you also can't see the famous art inside the city's iconic Louvre Museum. It was closed on Friday as a precaution so museum staffers could move priceless works of art from lower levels to upper levels. Tourists who didn't hear the news found out from signs saying the museum made the choice to shut its doors.
I was really excited to go in, see the Mona Lisa, see a bunch of the other artwork that they had there. So yeah, it was really disappointing that we couldn't get a chance to get inside.
The southern suburbs outside of Paris have been hit the hardest. With floodwaters seeping into homes and apartments, thousands were forced to evacuate. Some had to be rescued.
You have to have seen it and honestly lived through it. This is the first time I've been through this. We think it only happens to others, and then when it hits us, it's different.
French President Francois Hollande is expected to declare a state of emergency in parts of the country. That's so these waterlogged neighborhoods can receive federal funds to pay for what will be a massive cleanup.
European, Arab and U.S. diplomats have arrived in Paris for a French-led effort to revive the Israel-Palestine peace process. Israel has rejected the conference. French President Francois Hollande, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon and foreign ministers and officials from nearly 30 countries and international organizations are taking part in meetings on Friday. Israel and Palestine will not take part, but French leaders say they hope this meeting will lead to eventual direct talks. French Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault, who is hosting the meeting, said direct talks between the two parties do not work.
Netanyahu is denouncing the plan and is repeating his call for bilateral negotiations.
הדרך לשלום איננה עוברת דרך ועדות בינלאומיות שמנסות לכפות הסדר, מקצינות את התביעות הפלסטיניות ועל ידי כך מרחיקות את השלום. הדרך לשלום עוברת דרך משא ומתן ישיר וללא תנאים מוקדמים בין הצדדים. כך היה בעבר כשהשגנו שלום עם מצרים וגם עם ירדן, וכך צריך להיות עם הפלסטינים. אם המדינות שמתכנסות השבוע בפריז באמת רוצות לקדם את השלום, עליהן להצטרף לקריאתי לאבו מאזן לבוא למשא ומתן ישיר כזה. זוהי הדרך לשלום, אין בלתה.
Netanyahu also says the initiative could hurt prospects for peace, saying it could serve to radicalize Palestinian demands. Netanyahu has claimed the conference will try to force an agreement on the two parties, although recently he has partially endorsed the Arab peace plan, which would guarantee Israel with full diplomatic relations with 57 Arab and Muslim countries, once a peace deal is signed with the Palestinians. The Prime Minister says he's fully committed to making peace with the Palestinians and Israel's Arab neighbors, but that the Paris Peace Conference is not the answer. Both Israel and the Palestinians have not been invited to attend the conference.
Open borders, shared security, Palestinian territory under Arab sovereignty, Israeli territory run by Israel. The vision: 2 states, 1 homeland, where people can live wherever they want. Israelis in Ramallah, Palestinians in Tel Aviv. Palestinian and Israeli activists working on the plan for 4 years say that instead of changing the reality on the ground, they aim to change ideas and depart from a power balance-based platform. Under the plan, Jewish settlers would not be evacuated from Palestinian land. Instead, they would agree to live in a Palestinian state under Arab rule. The plan still needs to address key points of Palestinian right of return and Jerusalem's status.
Gearing up to celebrate Jerusalem Day, and Prime Minister Netanyahu is already honoring it with a special speech in the Knesset. Jerusalem Day is a national Israeli holiday that commemorates the reunification of the city after the Six-Day War in 1967. The holiday will officially be observed this Sunday, June 5th, but that hasn't stopped Israelis from starting to talk about it a few days early. The Prime Minister held a special cabinet session in honor of the day on Thursday, along with giving a speech at the Knesset about it. Netanyahu used the opportunity to defend Israel's right to Jerusalem and gave a detailed history of the Jewish people in the Old City, dating back to the time of King David through the First and Second Temple eras until today.
יום השנה 49 לאיחודה מחדש של בירת ישראל מוצא את ירושלים במגמה ברורה של התפתחות, של פריחה ושל הישגים מעוררי גאווה. יש הרבה נושאים ואתגרים שמונחים לפנינו, בהם צריכים לטפל, אנחנו עושים זאת, נמשיך לעשות זאת. אבל דבר אחד ברור, ירושלים, לב האומה, בירתנו המאוחדת, מתפתחת בצעדי ענק. אני לא חושב שיש פה מקום לאפולוגטיקה כלשהי. איננו צריכים לתרץ את הימצאותנו בירושלים. מאז ראשית דרכנו כאומה, קיומנו נקשר בירושלים.